first Indian Prime Minister to do so. That was in 2015. Then in 2018 also he had spoken about their contribution. Let's listen in and just dip in as there is a guard of honor and a somber ceremony that's presently on. Remember this moment. As per the Indian Council of World Affairs, we are told over 1 million Indian soldiers had served abroad, especially during the World War I. And this was especially the officers who were enlisted in Belgium, in France, 1914 to 1915. 1915, we are in 2025. It's a reminder that we must not forget how many of Indian soldiers were part of that war. In 1914, when the British government had declared war against Germany, that's when infantry divisions, cavalry brigades of the Indian Army, then of course as a British colony, were ordered to be deployed. Remember, in these terrains where our Indian soldiers had served, many of them never returned. It's very important that Prime Minister Modi, even in 2025, taking out a movement from otherwise, which is a business initiative and appealing for investments, to not only go and meet, as he's being briefed about senior officers from the French military about the history and heritage, but also acknowledged the courageous escape of Veer Savarkar, and that when he was being transported by the sea, how he tried or attempted a brave escape. So Prime Minister Modi making very important symbolic statements here. My colleague Shashank Mattu is joining me for the latest on that. Shashank, it's interesting, and this is not the first time he's acknowledged the contribution and the sacrifice of our soldiers. Tell us more about it.
No, you're absolutely right. Marseille is particularly important in the history of Indian participation in the First World War. Marseille was the main base for the Indian troops fighting in France during the First World War. In fact, in the Mazargues cemetery, you also have an in memorial at the rear of the cemetery for Indian soldiers in the war. I think the Prime Minister at various points in the past has talked about the role that India played in the First World War, a role that is sometimes forgotten in the broader conflict that took place between in the Western world. But of course, he's there. You've seen memorials like this even in Haifa. When he goes to Israel, he talks about Haifa Memorial as well as those that exist between India and countries from around the world. It shows that we're not two countries on different continents, but we do have also a very, very close relationship. So yes, going to Mazagaez, where there is a memorial for Indian soldiers and their contribution in World War I is extremely important. He's done this in other countries as well, and is establishing and reclaiming a little bit of that history that tends to be forgotten.
So these memorials and war cemetery that he's a part of, I must add here, while most of them, of course, have been unknown, but there have been some known soldiers as well who have a separate memorial in France. They've been acknowledged for their sacrifice in the line of duty. French President Emmanuel Macron putting down a message right now. We saw Prime Minister Modi also as part of the homage put a rose. Macron also followed suit. A message by two top leaders of France and India, and to just remember that there's been a connect, not just in the modern times, but ever since the 1914-15 era, that Indian soldiers and in the manner in which they've contributed. Shashank, what is the part of the itinerary here on? And of course, when does he leave for the United States of America? Because all of this will be part of the schedule.
Well, yes, absolutely. So during the rest of the visit in Marseille, he's expected to visit a port. He's also expected to go see a nuclear power reactor. That, Pooja, is extremely important because one of the key conversations happening between India and France is on the question of nuclear power reactors and getting French companies into India to help meet India's growing energy needs. So manufacturing nuclear power plants and upscaling India's nuclear power generation, that's going to be extremely important. And therefore, Marseille is going to be important for that, both for the port as well as for visiting this atomic energy plant. They're also going to have him then move off to the United States. He's going to fly to America, and he is going to land there on the evening of today. So it is going to be a jam-packed day for the Prime Minister, as he hopefully will look to impress upon France his need for nuclear power, as well as also...
This is an important moment, Shashank, stay on with me. A sort of a guard of honor in itself. It's a ceremonial event that there were these veterans from the French military, possibly who've served in wars and have been associated, of course, with significant developments in France, but they were present. That's where Prime Minister Modi and French President Emmanuel Macron also taking out a moment to acknowledge their contribution. And of course, this is a brief moment, but it symbolizes how to ensure that militaries, these are soldiers who are ready to sacrifice their life in the line of duty. And Prime Minister Modi ensuring that this was part of his itinerary as well, and not just by himself. He is with French President Emmanuel Macron. And I have to also appreciate and admire Prime Minister Modi in the crisp kurta, the Pahadi topi. He's putting that Indian heritage and attire on display as well as he heads to the war cemetery. So he's interacting, as I see, with other delegates. Shashank, tell me this. So there's an Indian consulate, I believe, also that has to be inaugurated. He's already mentioned Veer Savarkar's brave escape in France.
Yes, that's absolutely right. This is again part of the Prime Minister highlighting some of the earlier political links that the two countries have had with the escape of Veer Savarkar from a ship where he was, of course, being taken by British colonial authorities. But you're right as well that he is going to be the inauguration of India's new consulate in Marseille. India has been expanding its diplomatic footprint really around the world, and of course it has a rather large diaspora in Marseille as well, and therefore to make sure that India's diplomatic representation reaches them, he's also going to be inaugurating this consulate. He's also going to be visiting the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, which is an international nuclear fusion collaboration. So he's going to do all of that, and then he's going to leave for the United States for his next engagement.
All right, so he appears to be now departing from the war cemetery. Remember, it's not just a cemetery, it's also a memorial that honors memory of Indian soldiers. And this ultimate sacrifice in foreign shores, foreign lands, territory that they were completely stranger to, but as part, of course, as part of their duty, they did not flinch even once. Many of them unknown. There have been some known soldiers as well whose names have been mentioned. They have a separate memorial that acknowledges their life journey and sacrifice. So these are the visuals coming in. A band playing the national anthem, both for France and India. And like Shashank is telling us, remember that he's also going to visit the ITER site, the home of International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. I would say, Shashank, that this visit definitely appears to have many layers, isn't it? We were talking business yesterday, AI, Artificial Intelligence Action Summit yesterday. Today we are talking about soldiers. And this reflects of the bond India-France can build onto as well very strongly.
No, you're absolutely right. I think that, as has been said by some of our most distinguished diplomats, France is really our most important strategic partner when it comes to Western Europe. There's a relationship that spans history, defense, as well as nuclear power and so on. It's really been a relationship that has stood the test of time. One of India's really steadfast partners in the Western world. So yes, you're absolutely right. Defense conversations, nuclear power, artificial intelligence, and of course, both countries share a joint commitment to strategic autonomy. It's a phrase that India has and that the French also like when it comes to describing their foreign policy. So there's a meeting of the minds when it comes to India and France.
Shashank, tell me about Macron's relationship equation with Prime Minister Modi. We keep talking about Trump and Modi. How have you seen Macron build his equation with Prime Minister Modi? Because I remember when he came to India a few years ago, remember he talked about how he needs Indian students, appeal to them, they need to come to France. He has been very vocal in his equation with India, and especially Indian Prime Minister. Tell us more about it.
No, in fact, the two leaders now are in many senses very seasoned international statesmen. Prime Minister Modi has been in office since 2014. Emmanuel Macron has headed France since 2017. They are in some senses senior international statesmen now and have met each other a great deal. You know that Prime Minister Modi was the guest of honor at the Bastille Day Parade, which is France's National Day in July 2023. And then India returned the favor and Prime Minister Modi invited him for the Republic Day celebrations in January 2024. You don't just do that for any other a normal world leader. There is obviously a relationship between these two men that has been forged over the last 7 years. And as these two men have taken the roles of international senior statesmen because they've been in office for so long, there is a relationship that has been established here, both from Emmanuel Macron tying him to France, as well tying him to India, as well as from Prime Minister Modi, who went in 2015 as well to France. He's had a relationship with France since he became Prime Minister. So that relationship between these two leaders has been around for the last 7 years.
Also, I want to inform the viewer that right before this visit to the cemetery, the moment he landed in the city of Marseille, he had a social media statement to put. I would just want to quote from here. Landed in Marseille and in India's quest for freedom. This city holds special significance. It was here the great Veer Savarkar attempted a courageous escape. I want to thank the people of Marseille in France and the French activists of that time who demanded that Savarkar not be handed over to British custody. It's the bravery of Savarkar that continues to inspire generations. This is very important. Remember, because it is in this government tenure that we have seen that Savarkar image has now witnessed and with more layers have come forth, otherwise just deemed controversial, often dismissed aside. But especially with Prime Minister Modi talking about his brave escape, it adds on to the image and possibly more clarity to who Veer Savarkar really was. Images on your screen. Prime Minister Modi flaunting the Pahadi topi, Himachali topi if I'm correct. And I would love if there's a correction to that. In crisp kurta and churidar that we have seen, he wore at the AI Action Summit, of course, with the French president. And remember, Shashank, I bring you in here. Emmanuel Macron is accompanying him everywhere. I see. It's not that Prime Minister Modi, after the Action Summit, is just onto his own, even at the cemetery, even at other locations. Consistently, it's a Macron-Modi jodi.
No, you're absolutely right. I think Macron understands how important this relationship. He's talked about the importance of the strategic relationship between India and France in the past. You know, if we just sit down and look at what has happened, the two men have chaired the AI Action Summit, which is, of course, big for Macron as well. The Prime Minister is, of course, there to also discuss furthering defense deals between India and France that could be worth potentially billions of dollars. They're also potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars and is perhaps deals on nuclear power plants as well. So Emmanuel Macron understands how important that relationship is. He also knows that he has a very, very strong partnership with Prime Minister Modi that's been built over the last 8 years. And therefore, it just speaks to the fact that, over the course of this visit, they've decided to do these engagements together. It's extremely important. And it speaks again to the partnership between India and France.
So when does he then leave for the United States of America? Shashank, what are you picking up about the rest of the itinerary of the day?
Yes, so he's, as I mentioned, he is expected to go to the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, ITER. It is a nuclear fusion project. It is expected to take place soon after this. He's also expected to open the consulate at Marseille, also visit a port. So that is expected to take a couple of hours before he then heads off to the United States. So it is going to be a very, very packed itinerary. These 3 quick engagements that he's going to do about opening the consulate, going to ITER, and also visiting Marseille port. So it is going to be a very packed itinerary before he moves off to the United States.
Right, so about a few hours of more packed schedule, and then he will head to the United States of America. Very crucial visit, no rest. Remember, USA is going to be very important. This time there are some concerning issues to be discussed. India will have to put its view very clearly. Meanwhile, after the AI Action Summit, interaction with the tech honchos, asking them to invest in India. This is the right time to invest, is what Prime Minister Modi had said. And then to visit and acknowledge the contribution of the soldiers. What do you think, Shashank, is on agenda for Prime Minister Modi? Because while this is, so to say, on the sidelines of the event, do you think there's a certain symbolism, a certain strategy that Prime Minister Modi is looking and is at play here as much for France as for the audience back home in India?
No, you're absolutely right. I think that when it comes to the relationship between India and France, I think the Prime Minister is trying to show that that he is placing front and center India's history, its strategic role in the world that at times in the past, especially when it comes to the First World War, has at times been somewhat neglected. His view is, of course, no, India has always been a power that on the world stage has contributed, has shaped the history of world politics, and therefore highlighting and acknowledging the role of Indian soldiers by going to the Marseille cemetery is a very, very powerful reminder of the role that India has played on the world stage in the past that has been sometimes forgotten, but that the Prime Minister now wants to put on center stage. He's done this numerous times when he goes to Israel, when he came to France in 2015 as well. He went to a World War I cemetery to commemorate Indian soldiers. So in line with what he says now, what he wants for India to do, which is take its rightful place back at the center of world politics. He's saying that, look, we've had that role in the past as well, and he wants to highlight that both for foreign audiences as well as for the audience back home in India.
All right, Shashank, so as we play these visuals, stay on with me. This is from the War Cemetery in Marseille, acknowledging the support, laying a wreath for the Indian soldiers. A message that is being penned by Prime Minister Modi. Also, Emmanuel Macron followed it shortly after. And constant discussions. He was being briefed by the senior military officers, and then he heads out possibly to inaugurate the Indian consulate as well. Remember, when you talk about over 1 million soldiers, that means as many families. Many of those families never got to see these soldiers again. It's very important. It may have been in 1914, 1915, a different era. But in 2025, to acknowledge, remember, many of these families, and remember their descendants, could be watching this right now. And it's a very important symbolic initiative for the Prime Minister of India to go to France and ensure this is part of the itinerary to remember them. And some of them, like I mentioned, are also known soldiers who have a separate memorial dedicated to them, while many, many would be unknown soldiers from different states of India. There was, we were told, from Meerut, from Lahore, which was, of course, then undivided India. So there were different states and cities from where our soldiers were represented and fighting on these foreign shores. Shashank, so tell us this, what is the key takeaway then for us of this visit to France? 2 days, but looks like it was a packed schedule.
No, you're absolutely right. It began with the AI Action Summit, where, of course, the Indian Prime Minister and the French President both laid out their visions for how they see artificial intelligence as absolutely crucial technology that's going to shape the future of world politics, economics, how societies function, They both laid out their vision for how they expect it to go. It was a well-received speech by the Prime Minister in terms of acknowledging both the risks but also the promise and the opportunity offered by artificial intelligence. So that was a very, very packed first day in terms of delivering for on a very, very crucial issue of global governance moving forward. Now, of course, you have the Prime Minister also, of course, going to the National Cemetery. He's also, of course, going to go and go to the ITER, where they're going to talk, of course, about nuclear fusion, and you're expecting to see some takeaways on nuclear power and further India-France cooperation on that. You're expecting to hear more about India-France cooperation on defense. That's a key takeaway that we're going to be looking for as the day goes on. And also, of course, the opening of the consulate in Marseille, which is again going to expand to India's already expanding diplomatic network around the world, which is really a remarkable development over the last decade or so that India has undertaken. So really a very packed two-day visit, as it often is with an India-France visit. Of course, now he goes on to a challenging assignment in Washington.
So on that note, Shashank, thank you very much. And with this sixth visit of Prime Minister Modi to France, what is it that he said, especially at the CEO forum after the AI Action Summit? He also met the top tech giants, corporate giants, asking them to invest in India, that this is the right time. Let's listen into an excerpt of that.
यही समय है, सही समय है। भारत की प्रगति में सभी की प्रगति जुड़ी है। इसका एक उदाहरण एविएशन क्षेत्र में देखा गया। जब भारतीय कंपनियों ने हवाई जहाजों के लिए बड़े ऑर्डर्स दिए और अब जब हम 120 नए एयरपोर्ट्स खोलने जा रहे हैं, तो भविष्य की संभावनाओं का आप स्वयं अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं। हमने एक स्टेबल पॉलिटी और प्रिडिक्टेबल पॉलिसी, ये इकोसिस्टम स्थापित किया है। रिफॉर्म, परफॉर्म, ट्रांसफॉर्म के पथ पर चलते हुए आज भारत विश्व की 5वीं सबसे बड़ी इकोनॉमी है। विश्व की सबसे तेजी से ग्रो करने वाली मेजर इकोनॉमी है। जल्द ही दुनिया की तीसरी बड़ी इकोनॉमी बनने जा रहे हैं। भारत की स्किल्ड युवा टैलेंट फैक्ट्री और इनोवेशन स्पिरिट वैश्विक पटल पर हमारी पहचान है। मैं आप सबको कहता हूं कि भारत में आने का यही समय है, सही समय है। भारत की प्रगति में सभी की प्रगति जुड़ी है। मैं आप सभी को भारत की विकास यात्रा से जुड़ने के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूं। जब फ्रांस की फिनेस और भारत का स्केल मिलेगा, जब भारत का पेस और फ्रांस का प्रिसिजन मिलेगा, जब फ्रांस की टेक्नोलॉजी और भारत का टैलेंट मिलेगा, तो सिर्फ बिजनेस लैंडस्केप ही नहीं, ग्लोबल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन होगा।
France's technology and Bharat's talent is how Prime Minister Modi put it. And concluding that visit here at the cemetery acknowledging Indian soldiers, sixth visit of Prime Minister Modi to France, he then heads to a much anticipated visit to the United States of America. Leaving you with these visuals, thank you so much for watching India Today. Akshita Nand Gopal coming up next.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
मुस्कुराए लड़खड़ाए जिंदगी, चाहे जो भी हो मैं हूँ, चाहे जो भी हो मैं हूँ। गले से लगा बिन सोचे कल हो
पेशेंट के लिए कौन सा रूम प्रेफर करेंगे आप? सर,
जिंदगी भर के प्यार का कोई रेट कार्ड नहीं होता। टाटा AIG हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस, विद यू लाइक फैमिली, विद यू।
Enthusiastic, excited Indian diaspora. As always, we have seen this is in Marseille, remember, after he was acknowledged and paid homage and laid a wreath for the Indian soldiers. This is the real peoples to peoples bridge in 2025. Remember, this people to people bridge is going to decide how they, in one way, are the ambassadors of India, how they benefit with their stay in France, and also will help push the equation between India and France. Full on. India flags, France's flags there by the diaspora. A lot of enthusiasm, selfies that all of them want to take, and all smiles from Macron and Modi. A bit of autographs that Prime Minister Modi is taking out time for. Young and old, men and women who we see. Many of them possibly French citizens now, but also ensuring their Indian heritage and connect remains. But look at this. This is popularity of a leader. These are not about 10 or 20 among, but you can see clearly hundreds of them have congregated and possibly waiting there. I can look at the security cordon, anxious and ensuring that all of it is kept safe, because we're talking about Indian Prime Minister and French President together there. From Marseille in France, where you've got the Indian diaspora gathered in large numbers, and Prime Minister Modi, French President Macron taking a moment there to also enjoy the song and dance, the colors and the culture of India that's come alive on French soil as well. This is right after the Prime Minister's paid a visit also to the war cemetery in Marseille, paying a tribute to the fallen French soldiers. And now you're going to be seeing the consulate also being officially opened, inaugurated in Marseille by Prime Minister Modi and President Macron. Shashank Mattu is with us for more details on this. Shashank, these images perhaps sum up the highs of the India-France relationship, the warmth with which both Prime Minister Modi and French President Macron have been greeted with all the dhol, a bit of hit of Indian flavor in France.
Fellow countrymen, it is my great privilege to welcome His Excellency the President, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, and our Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji. We are deeply honored by your presence here today, sir. May I kindly request the esteemed dignitaries to press the buzzer simultaneously and formally open the Consulate General of India in Marseille.
Thank you.
Moi aussi. T'es en forme? Oui. Bonjour messieurs, dames. Bonjour madame.
Okay, so you just saw the moment there of the Indian consulate in Marseille being unveiled by Prime Minister Modi and French President Macron to huge cheers from the Indian diaspora. You heard chants of Modi, Modi there as the plaque was unveiled, and you see the moment of bonhomie also, the French president pretty much playing to the galleries as he realizes that, look, this is what the people want. So he holds on to his hand and raises it to the crowds there to get a loud cheer. But these images of the Indian diaspora also, and the Prime Minister also indulging all of their requests. Many of them came together asking for selfies. There were kids there who the Prime Minister was seen interacting with, and then also stopping for a brief bit to take in the sights and sounds of the dhol also that was being played there by the Indian diaspora gathered at the Indian consulate.
प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी
And these were images from just a few moments ago where you had French President Macron also interacting with the diaspora and with little children there. And you can also see that President Macron there is also overwhelmed by the kind of support, the joy on the Indian diaspora's faces, on all of the people there who've gathered in such large numbers. Through the entire event, chants of Bharat Mata Ki Jai, chants of Modi Modi reverberating in that area there as the Indian consulate was unveiled by Prime Minister Modi and French President Macron. Very telling, really, that in the course of this 3-day visit, every single location that Prime Minister Modi has gone to, the French President has accompanied him personally, has been there to greet him at the AI summit, has walked him with all the other world leaders also there. He personally met, welcomed Prime Minister Modi, took him into the venue, and at every point you see that friendship between the two leaders translating to the friendship also between the two countries. And President Macron being also clearly, at least looking at what's happening there, very amused and amazed at the kind of reception there for Prime Minister Modi in Marseille. And you can see also that both of them keep chatting through the entire conversation that they are having with the Indian diaspora, only finally to make it up to the Indian consulate. And then you can see, of course, those images of all of them shaking hands with the Indian diaspora.
नगाड़ों के साथ और जरा गौर करिए गा रही हैं उसमें
As we continue getting you these images of the grand welcome for Prime Minister Modi at Marseille, and particularly when he was going to unveil the new Indian consulate. Let's bring in also Shivani Sharma for more details. Shivani, you know, the images that we're seeing of the friendship, the bonhomie between Prime Minister Modi and President Macron clearly translates, the bonhomie between these two leaders clearly translates also to what we're seeing with regards to the new and fresh collaborations constantly between India and France.
Akshita, in past few years, the perception of the world towards India has changed drastically, and the way these world leaders have been meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the gestures they've been showing, the warmth in their meeting is portraying how India is leading, not only in terms of technology, but the AI for which Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in France, the summit where he was heading it. And we see these visuals, these heartwarming pictures of how Prime Minister Narendra Modi is not only welcomed by the French president, but also the people in France who are the Indians, the Indian diaspora out there, the way they are welcoming Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and those chants of Bharat Mata Ki Jai, Vande Mataram, that respect for India is everywhere in the world.
My apologies, we've lost the connection with Shivani. We'll go back to her in just a bit, but she was highlighting to us how really the world perceives now India and how that's completely had such a drastic makeover in the sense of what India's image is
worldwide among these world leaders and at some of the biggest events. For example, the AI summit yesterday, where you had Prime Minister Modi as the co-chair talking to the world about what every country can do to lead the AI and digital transformation. From that to today, where you've got the focus on the India-France story, the India-France relationship, a new Indian consulate being unveiled, very fittingly telling you about the progress in the ties between India and France. And that moment there, some of the highlights from the interaction with the Indian diaspora, you see a man singing to them, and President Macron completely floored by his singing skills. And President Macron also seen with the Prime Minister meeting little children. They stopped for a brief moment also to take in some of the dhol and Indian culture at display on French soil. The left of your screens is the moment right after when the official unveiling of the Indian consulate took place. And right after that, you had Prime Minister Modi and the French President raising their arms up to celebrate this new chapter in Indo-French ties. And something I mentioned earlier also about how telling it is that French President Macron has personally escorted Prime Minister Modi to many of these locations, has personally accompanied him to every pit stop as part of his France visit. And that by itself tells you about how India has become such a crucial strategic partner for France. In these images, that story is clearly written all over. Shivani is back with us. Shivani, apologies, we lost your connection there earlier, but you were highlighting to us how we're seeing now a fresh chapter in the Indo-French relationship story.
See, Akshita, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in France for the 6th time. In fact, this was his 6th visit to France. And India and France relationship is growing. Every visit we see more and more enthusiasm between both the leaders, and this time too the same was quite visible. India and France will continue to move together in terms of their defense ties, in terms of their technological ties. The AI summit that signifies how India is leading the world in terms of technology also. Now India is not back. India is no more a follower but a leader even in AI, and that's what was a very big message of this particular visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to France, and the way he's being welcomed in France, not only by the French leaders, but the Indian diaspora in France also shows, Akshita, how the respect, the dignity for India is growing across the world, and more nations want to collaborate with India for their future prospects, for their programs, be it defense, be it technology, be it aviation. And when we talk about France, France is a nation with which India is going to finalize a very big deal, the deal for the Rafale marine jets. So that's also in the pipeline. The Scorpion submarine deals is also in the pipeline, and much more is happening with France. But these pictures are overwhelming, where we see Prime Minister Narendra Modi being welcomed by the Indian diaspora, and those slogans of Bharat Mata Ki Jai and Vande Mataram that are really filling each Indian's heart with pride. Akshita.
Very, very true. And Shivani, I was referring to this earlier about how at every stop of the Prime Minister's visit to France along the last 3 days, French President Macron has been there to escort, accompany Prime Minister Modi, and that by itself is very telling of how important a partner India is to France.
Certainly, Akshita, as we know that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been in France since last 2 days. There have been multiple events of both the leaders been seeing together during these events. So the body language of the gestures, the warmth between both the leaders is really showing how India and France are growing their ties, be it the new consulate that's been inaugurated where we can see both the leaders together, even the visit to the war cemetery where we could see the leaders together. So most of these events where Prime Minister Narendra Modi was present, he was led by and welcomed by Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, and the way they have been speaking and meeting and jointly discussing things has been quite an indication of how India is growing in terms of its ties with France, many other countries. Now, soon after France, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be heading to America. That will be another big visit by PM. But now what we are witnessing is the pictures from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's welcome by the Indian diaspora in France, where India has been leading in terms of its ventures in technological spheres, the education sphere, or in the AI, which was the main focus of this visit as he was heading the AI summit in France. So this is a very important visit, Akshita, and it's quite evident from the pictures, the way he has been meeting with the President Macron is quite true to say that India is growing in its image as a leader, a world leader in all the spheres, including AI and technology.
Very true, and we saw that also reflective clearly in the fact that Prime Minister Modi was the co-chair along with President Macron at the AI summit as well yesterday. Of course, right after this visit to Paris and then now to Marseille, you'll have Prime Minister Modi heading off to the second leg of this two-nation tour, which is to America. Another extremely important visit tour, and of course, again, a country that deeply values India's friendship. But really, as far as these images go in France from Marseille, it shows you how also the Indian diaspora there values these moments and these pictures of the warmth, the friendship between Prime Minister Modi and French President Macron, and also indicative in the fact that you have essentially a new chapter with this new Indian consulate being opened up in Marseille of France. And let's also, in fact, get you those images once again. Let's play that out for you of the moment where Prime Minister Modi and President Macron were seen interacting with, in fact, all of the Indian diaspora. And there was a bit of dhol where they stopped and also appreciated all of those who gathered.
Request the
Great images that you just saw there from Marseille. Like I said, putting the focus on how we're seeing new highs in the relationship between India and France. But remember that tonight, Prime Minister Modi heads to America, the second leg of his two-nation tour, another very, very important visit by the Prime Minister. Ahead of his US visit, Prime Minister Modi met with US Vice President J.D. Vance as well as his wife Usha Vance. And it essentially sets the stage for what we'll see in America as well. Prime Minister Modi took to social media to express his happiness over meeting J.D. Vance's family and joining them in celebrating their son Vivek's birthday. J.D. Vance responded by thanking Prime Minister Modi for his kindness and referred to thoughtful gifts that his children received from the Prime Minister. Now, Prime Minister Modi will, of course, be headed to America tonight, and there is a meeting scheduled with President Trump. It marks their first in-person meeting since Trump 2.0 came to power in the United States. During his visit, Prime Minister Modi may also engage in tough talk with Trump on several issues like potential tariffs. That's become a big global headline, illegal immigration, keeping in mind the deportations that are happening, India-Iran ties, and the Taliban. These are a few issues that will be raised in his meeting with Trump.
I would look for 4 different things in the outcome of this meeting this week between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. One, what kind of personal rapport they're able to reestablish. Second, continuation of existing formats, high-level formats for structured engagement between India and the US. There are a number of dialogues. And finally, I think some very quick wins for both sides, which is specific deals that allow Trump to say that this is helping with the trade deficit.
It is so good that Modi ji is only the second prime minister who is coming to visit Trump after he became president again. And there are a lot of issues that need to be talked about. The tariff is a big issue, the bilateral relationships, commerce, the immigration issues. There is just so much going on, and it's important that Modi ji is here in Washington, D.C., rebuilding that bond of friendship that he had established.
It's a fantastic opportunity between the two leaders and two countries. You have to understand Trump is trying to drive change both domestically and internationally. And India is looking at more investments and technology from the US. So I think it's important both leaders understand what are their priorities. They do have a very strong relationship and warmth towards each other. So I think it's an important occasion to set the agenda for the next 4 years between the two countries and two leaders.
India is a big country. It's becoming a big power. So with that comes big responsibilities. And from our angle, from the Greek angle, we would love to see India being present in the Red Sea, being present in the Mediterranean, and accepting the role of an important power that it is. I assume that that's what Prime Minister Modi is going to discuss with President Trump. And it's good that he's one of the first leaders that meets the American president here in Washington, D.C.
The Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, coming and visiting with President Trump at this juncture is great. I think that we already have close ties with India, and it's just going to improve even more. And I'm excited. Quite frankly, I'm excited. As you already know, President Trump is pro-business, and the Indian economy, the United States economy, will share in the prosperity, I think, under President Trump. And so that's why I think Prime Minister Modi coming to Washington and meeting President Trump now is very important.
We have seen world leaders jockeying for position to be able to engage with this new administration and the new president. And the fact that the Prime Minister was invited by the administration within the first few weeks of him being in power, I think that's pretty significant, and it speaks to the importance of the U.S.-India partnership. Now, it'll be a bit of an unusual meeting in the sense that these are early days for the administration. It hasn't really had an opportunity to focus on its approach to India. You also have a number of key posts within the administration focused on India that have not yet been filled.
And we will get you all the details of the Prime Minister's visit to America. But for the moment, I'm wrapping up this broadcast. Coming up on the other side is our entertainment special.
You are watching India Today.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
मुस्कुराए लड़खड़ाए जिंदगी चाहे जो भी हो मैं हूँ चाहे जो भी हो मैं हूँ गले से लगा बिन सोचे कल हो।
सर, पेशेंट के लिए कौन सा रूम प्रेफर करेंगे आप? सर,
जिंदगी भर के प्यार का कोई रेट कार्ड नहीं होता। टाटा AIG हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस, विद यू लाइक फैमिली, विद यू ऑलवेज।
Rangila Re with Motorola's incredible range of smartphones.
Hello, Moto.
Decode the complex, making sense of the battle for power. They stand for trust, built over decades, earned with every analysis, every trend. They question.
सारी दिल्ली को शराबी बना दिए.
They challenge.
अभी जो सरकार आई हुई है, लोग बाग खाने के भी लाले पड़े हुए हैं.
They report to empower your choice.
We don't want LG taking our decisions. We don't have that kind of access to him.
They are your eyes on the ground, always there, where every vote matters. They are the election dream team.
In association with Tata AIG Health Insurance.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Hi, I am AI anchor Sana, bringing the top headlines for you, presented by Motorola.